Everybody signing on. Thanks for showing up on time. Just to let everybody know, there is a chat feature in the lower right-hand corner, so feel free to click on that and ask any questions in the chat, and I'll try to answer them as we go along today. I'm excited to cover some of the new updates that we have for LeoInsole. There's been a lot of really great things that are added, and they'll be available for beta testing next week. So if you're interested in getting in for that beta test, go ahead and drop your name in there, and I'll go ahead and run through kind of some of the updates. And I'm really excited about this because it shows some growth and some maturity from the LeoShape team. So one of the things that we've always known is that the ability to handle feet that look like feet has always been something that we specialize in. But when things start to get a little bit more deformed, a little bit more orthopedic, a little bit more medical, historically, it's been a little bit more difficult to accommodate those more deformed shapes or the more extreme anatomy when feet start to get into that really heavily medical category. So this is something that we've been really trying to tackle for a long time, is something to say, okay, we have this really great ability to design insoles quickly, to make them scalable, to make it really intuitive. The software is still really easy to use, but now it has more capabilities. So I'm super excited to share that with you guys today. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we can go ahead and get started. All right, let's see here. Got too many tabs open. All right. Hopefully you guys can see this screen. Great. So for those of you that aren't familiar with LeoInsole, I'll just give a quick run through of kind of the layout of everything. What I've done here is I've imported a pair of foot and leg scans using the import dialog. And it's really important to pick the unit of measurement for that scan file and also how that scan was taken. So these were taken in a semi-weighted position, and then I'll double check the landmarks and then make sure that the landmarks are in the right location, because sometimes the automatic detection algorithm will miss one or two, and we want to make sure that those landmarks are in the right spot to have the best success possible. So now that I have my foot scans in, they're oriented, and all the landmarks are in the right spot, then I can start designing. So one of the things that I would say most customers start with is a preset. So you can save any settings and make it your own preset, and you can import that later with the import yours feature here. I'm going to start with just one of our presets to get things going, and this will highlight one of the new features that's been available now for a couple of weeks, which is the blended heel post. So you can see that we have this nice transition here that's now kind of this blended feature here. It used to be more of a sharp transition like this, and it would fracture, especially on printed devices. So this is one of the big feedbacks we got from users that said, hey, stop making this a 90-degree transition. We want to have a nice smooth round over here. So now with the new updates, there's been this blended heel post. So anytime that you add a post, it's going to have a nice blend to it as well. So just to show you, this is located down in the foot posting category here. Obviously, I have a rear foot post that is activated. So if I turn that on and off, you'll see what's going on. And there's multiple shapes that are available here, right? So this is the U shape. You can also do it with a full block shape. So that will also have the transition, and any of the half posts will also have that transition. So that's one I'm really excited about for the 3D printing crowd especially, and that's going to show up on any of the heel posts. So now we have nice blended heel posts. And let me pull up my cheat sheet here and make sure I got all the other things we're going through. All right, so for the rest of the features, I'm really excited to introduce some new things that are have been added into the Dimensions tab here. So in the Dimensions tab, what we have are a couple of new features. So the first one that you'll notice is when I open the Dimensions tab, all of a sudden this outline shows up and these control points will show up as well. This is the ability to adjust the contours, the perimeter of the device. And this feature has been around actually for a couple of weeks now. Some of you guys may have noticed it if you're heavy LeoShape insole users currently. So these control points allow you to modify the shape of the device manually. The first release of this allowed for only the top surface. So the clinical surface facing the foot was the first iteration of this tool. But I'm really excited now we have the ability to, when you go into accommodative mode, so this is also a new change for us as well. So accommodative mode is going to replace what was previously called the thick insole setting. So think of this as the thick insole tool. You turn on accommodative mode, and now you get the thick insole. I'm going to hide the other side here so we can just see this one. So when I turn on and off accommodative, it's basically that thick insole tool. The other thing that will happen is you can see down here at the bottom, right now there's not a top and a bottom control. When I turn on accommodative, I now have contour editor top and bottom. So the top is going to use these control points to control the top facing clinical surface, the one that's touching the bottom of the foot. The bottom, for those of you in the German market, this is going to be the brand sole. This is going to be the shoe-facing surface of the device. So it will allow you to adjust the contours and how it transitions from that top clinical surface down to the surface that sits inside the shoe. So this is really nice because now you can really finely control and you can grossly manipulate to match feet that don't really look like feet anymore. So you can really manipulate the contours of this outline to match up with a foot. One quick thing to point out is sometimes if you have a tiny little control point, it's really annoying and difficult to click on it. So there is a control point size slider so that you can make the control points a little bit more easy to manage. Okay, let's jump into a real world situation. I'm going to switch tabs here. And these feet don't match the kind of typical foot profile anymore. We have a really extreme hallux valgus going on here, really narrow heel and extremely wide forefoot. So historically speaking, this would have been a little difficult. You'd have to spend a lot of time with the forefoot width sliders to accommodate this. Now what we can do, open up the Dimensions tab. I'm going to hide this side and just work on that right side. I can flip on accommodative mode. I'm also going to flip on full length mode. So this is kind of the template that we're working with now. But as you can see, as what typically happens with these really extreme hallux valgus situations, the great toe has translated so much and the width of the forefoot has increased so drastically that we have too much length and we have not enough width, although it's actually pretty close to start with. So what I can do is I can go back into the Dimensions tab, and you want to be careful so that you know that you're editing either the top or the bottom surface. So the top surface is going to be the one facing the foot. This is going to be the one that has to look like the foot. So what I can do here is I can hide the outline and I can adjust the length of this to get to a more appropriate length. So let's say something more like that looks reasonable. And I want to make sure I'm in my perfect bottom view here. And now I can start adjusting these control points. And sorry, it's going to run a little slow on the web call here. But I can start adjusting these control points. So the blue, the dark blue points, I can relocate the outline. And then the light blue points, I kind of change the rounding. So if you guys are Leo AFO users, this is really similar to how the trimline tool, the outline tool works in the Leo AFO space. And so now you can really customize the outline of this device to more appropriately match the actual foot. So I can turn that back on, and now we can see that the overall contour matches the foot much better. Now, let's say I was going to want to FDM print this. So I think I want to have a lot more thickness so that I can add some infill and I can make this nice and squishy for this particular patient. So I've added 8 mils and 6 mils under the forefoot. Another new feature while I have this tab open here is the bottom rounding offset. So if I set bottom rounding offset to 0, you're going to see that I have a square edge, and it goes all the way around the bottom of the device. If, as I slowly bump that up, you'll see that it starts to break the edge, and then I can even do a really aggressive round over so that it has now rounded the edge, and it's going to fit into the shoe quite well. So let's say I want to go maybe halfway, maintain some of that squareness and that support, but I'll maintain a little bit of it so that it's not a complete square edge also. So that's another new feature that's found under shell options. And if I go back into the dimensions tab, scroll back down to the contour editor feature, and now I switch into bottom mode. So again, I want to be in that bottom view. And all right, so bottom view, I want to now edit the bottom surface. So you see now that the contour has changed when I switch back and forth. So now I have 2 contour maps that are going to look really similar. One's going to control the top surface touching the foot. The other is going to control the bottom going into the shoe. So I can do this manually in this similar fashion. So if I just drag these, it's basically controlling how my skive or my curve, if I were to take this to a grinder. So for example, if I wanted to have a really hollow arch, you'll see that all of a sudden, if I drag it too much, I'm going to be exposing the foot. So obviously I don't want to be doing it that much. I can get a nice hollow though, so that I know that this is going to have the minimum amount of bulk, but still preserve the contours of the foot and match into the shoe. So I can do this manually, as I mentioned, and for this extreme situation, that's what I'm going to want to do. However, there's also another thing that's been introduced is the shoe type. So this is going to be great if you are in a mountain market, or if you're serving ski boot customers or ski boot sports stores kinds of things. There's now a generic, a ski boot, and a sport shoe category. And so that's one new feature, is that you can pick a ski boot or a sport for your shape of your inlay. The other thing is the sizing. So we've now added, this was new information for me. I'd never heard of this. So if you guys are already aware of this, more power to you. The Mondo Point sizing system. So within the Mondo Point sizing system, there is a low, a high, and a medium, which are going to be the widths. So if I set a width, and let's see if I hide my foot scan here so you can just see what's going to change. So if I change from a 210 low to a 210 high, it's going to increase the width. So all of a sudden now we have a new sizing system for Mondo Point sizing for the ski stores. And in addition to all the other sizing conventions that were already there. And then there's the, so if you're going to be making a ski boot device specifically, all that stuff is now available in here, okay? I'm going to pause for 1 second, see if there's any questions. Please let me know if you guys have a question. Get a sip of tea here. All right, so shoe type selection, accommodative mode, the contour, the top and the bottom editors. I want to show that again because I think that's a really important thing. And I want to show it with one other set of scans here. So another scan that's been historically a little difficult for the LeoInsole software to handle was what I call the pancake feet. This is a really typical American presentation, unfortunately. So it's a super flat, super wide, really thick, having some sort of valgus collapse typically. So you can see there's some navicular push out here and a little bit of abductovalgus going on. So historically speaking, this would be really difficult for these kind of typical inserts to match to this shape of a foot, and you'd have to spend a lot of time trying to make it work, and it just wouldn't ever be as good as I wanted it to be. So now with the, we turn on that accommodative mode, and it can be done in the 3/4 length, it can be done in the sulcus length, or it can be done in the full length also. So let's say again, we were going to do the full length, and I want to match up the bottom. So the first thing I would do is make sure I have my length appropriate. And I want to make sure that I'm in top mode so that this is going to match the actual contours of the foot. And now I can blow out the edges here and reposition. And with a little bit of effort, I can now get this to match much better to the actual shape of this foot. One thing that happens from time to time is this situation too, where I say, well, I don't really have enough arch contact here, so how can I improve the arch contact? That's another one that's been one of those things that's been needing a boost in the ability to address how the arch contour can be molded to the foot a little bit better. So something else that was snuck in a couple months ago is the distal start point. So with the distal start point, I can just start pushing that arch until I get it down into a position that looks like it has much better contact. And then with the arch shape and the arch width sliders, I can also change how this arch gets filled in and the arch height as well. So between all those things, I can hopefully get into a position where I say, okay, that looks like a much better contact across that arch surface there. And as always, I can add a heel cup. And now that I have my top surface defined, I can go back down and define how the skive, or how the edge rounding, the brand sole, the part that goes into the shoe is going to be shaped. So this is one of those things that I am really excited about, because I think it's going to save people a lot of time in terms of remakes and shaping manually on a grinder, for example. It's not fun to have to grind on an FDM device. I know that. So we're trying to make it so it's a little bit easier. And let's go ahead and see kind of what we ended up with. So now we have a really nice bevel that goes all the way around. And again, remember, there's that new feature in there for shell options. So I can even increase that more, where if I really want to round that over, or if I really want to have it a little bit more squared off for support, or just depending on your printer settings, if you don't want to have too much overhang, you can change how that feature is going to look. Okay, so that's some of the new sizing. Oh yeah, one other thing that was added recently is the ability with this mode activated. The flange tool used to be something that was not allowed because the geometry would interfere. So now what we can do is add a medial flange, and this is a great example of somebody who would probably benefit from one of these flanges, is to have some better contact on that medial kind of collapse there. And maybe that's a little too high still. But that is now the medial flange tool, and also the lateral flange tools are available in the accommodative mode. So we can go ahead and add both of those flanges in as well. And one other thing that was a constant feedback point. So we try to take in the feedback that real users are giving us and make improvements as quickly as we can. So one of the things was regarding the length reporting. So down here in the lower right-hand corner is that automatic measurement box. And the previous way that the length measurements were reported were sometimes it was easy to get confused as to what was the true length of the device. So now, if you look here at the length section, you can see an actual measurement for the length of this device. So that's going to go from the front to the back. That's going to be that full length measurement reported right here. So if I turn off the full length, you'll watch that length value drop down. And that wasn't necessarily the situation beforehand. So now there's going to be an actual length reported there, so that if you're shooting for a specific measurement or a specific shoe length, then now we're going to have a much more accurate representation of that. All right. Any questions? Let's see here. Mark, your question, what materials were you suggesting to print these devices? Great question. So there are many choices when it comes to options for printing here. I have seen a little bit of a convergence, I think, in the industry and in what many of our customers are using or recommending. So on the FDM side of things, there's definitely a convergence around TPU. TPU is pretty amazing, and there's different types of TPUs. So it used to be that TPU was a little bit more of, oh yeah, I just print in TPU and there's only one or two options available. Now there's a whole spectrum even within TPU. There's foaming TPUs that are expanding, and that's a whole can of worms. And then there's the non-expanding ones. There's also different densities of TPUs. So it really comes down to what is your goal? What are you shooting for? Do you want a really soft, squishy device? Do you want something to be more firm? Do you like the foaming characteristics? Foaming TPU is historically a little more difficult to control and print, and you have to really have a high tolerance to deal with that. But once you get those settings dialed in, you can end up with some really cool things. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because I did want to highlight also something that I think people have known have existed for a while, but maybe there's been a little bit of confusion about how to use these zones. So in this updated version, which again, for anybody that's joined recently, excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold here. So the there's a beta version that's going to be available sometime next week that will have these updates that I'm showing you today. In that, so if you're interested in that beta version, please let me know in the messages in that lower right-hand corner and just say, hey, I'm kind of curious, and we'll try to reach out to you to get you that beta so that you can start seeing it and using some of these features. Something that's been changed in that beta version, so now that the thick insole tab has been replaced by the accommodative toggle switch, the zones tab is a little bit cleaner. So there's not an overlap with the thick insole with the zones. That was a little confusing. So the zones tab, when you turn on and you can enable the zones, right now everything is grayed out. So no zones are actually active. So I have to pick one of these zones. So let's say I want to do a medial arch zone. And when I enable it, it now turns white. So any zone that has been enabled and is active when you do your export. So if I go and I export this right now, what I will get is I'll get not just the left and the right STL in the zip folder when I download it. I will get the left STL minus this zone, and then this zone as a separate geometry. So any zones that are active, so if I turn on the Met zone, if I turn on, for example, a heel zone, I could basically export each of these as separate geometries. So when in my zip folder that I export, each of these will be separate. That's important for a couple of reasons. If you're going to choose to FDM print this, you can take this into a standard slicer like Orca, and you can use these as modifiers. So when you import those as modifiers, you can then set the infill densities so that each zone has a different metamaterial property to it. So you can make it so that it has a super soft density under the heel, a more supportive density through the arch, and then maybe a nice soft density down here at the Met pad. So that is how we recommend using the zones. Later, it's our goal to have it where you can maybe do some latticing in the software with a little bit more controls. Right now, there's only the one lattice option available. But presently, you can export these zones, and you can export it as a 3MF file. And so all that stuff will be contained in the one 3MF file. So depending on how savvy you are with your slicer, depending on what equipment, what slicer software you're using, it's going to change a lot of what is possible. But just know that those options do exist. Somebody else asked, is there a French language option? There's not currently. We do have English and German. So you can see at the top right here, you got that little Union Jack going on, representing that we're in English mode. You can switch to German. I'm sure it would be possible for us to add a French one. We might need some help translating. So let me know if that's important to you. We could probably make it happen. Okay, to go back to Mark's question about materials, I think what I'm seeing is a trend where these thicker accommodative insoles, especially if you bump up the shell thicknesses, something like 8 and 6, you actually have some material to work with. Let's try that again. If you actually give yourself some material to work with, then you can do some infill that actually makes a difference and actually makes some clinical relevance. If you have like 2 millimeters of material, then you can't really do anything meaningful on most FDM machines, if that makes sense. To go back to kind of the more, it's funny to call it more traditional now, but these kind of 3D printed really thin styles. So just to show you some examples of what's possible. This style, hopefully you guys can see that. is printed on a powder bed printer in PA11 or PA12. Really strong, crazy thin, very lightweight, incredible details. So you can see, oh, there we go. You can see the text, you can see the reinforcement bars. Powder bed printing on a SLS or MJF machine really can yield some pretty amazing results. And in my experience, prices are coming down. You know, we have some US partners who will print, you know, a pair of these, for example, in the $30 or $40 range. So if that's something that's interesting for you, let me know, and we have some connections that we can make that happen. I know Formlabs opened up recently a print for service campaign where you can just send them files and they'll print it for you. That's another great option to get kind of the thin, hard nylon shells. Other options, so when it comes to the kind of FDM space, obviously there's like the do-it-yourself category with like a Bamboo Labs machine or something like that. We also have some options where we have another version of this software that's directly integrated with a belt-driven FDM printer, where you can basically hit send to print. And it will take this file, it will take the zones that are predefined, and you can actually assign density values to it, send it to print. You don't have to worry about the slicing. You don't have to worry about the print queuing and loading and unloading the printer because it's a belt-driven printer. And so if that's something that's interesting for you, that's a really highly automated, intelligent workflow where you can use LeoInsole to design these shapes, customize them to foot scans, and then basically, as easy as it is to send something to your inkjet printer, to just say send to print, and it will go onto the belt printer. And right now, that's available for offsite printing only, so essentially as a print service sort of thing. But hopefully, in Q3 and Q4, we'll have that where it's something that will be available on site, potentially at your office or lab. So if that's interesting to you also, please let me know if you're interested about that. Let's check the questions here and see what else is going on. All right, Eric asked, do the zones exported count as an extra download? No, sir. The zones are all part of the download. So when you hit the download button, you will get one zip folder. That one zip folder will have a left and a right, and that's counted as one pair on our records. If you have the zones active, so the left and the right side, if you have all those zones activated, they will just be included into that zip folder. So it's not going to count as a separate download. It's not like an upgrade feature. It's just there and ready to use if that's something that you're interested in. So we can always follow up offline if you want to learn more, but that feature is there available for everybody to use. Right now, the current LeoInsole that you have access to, it'll look basically the same, but it will have the zones and then the thick insole tab. This slightly newer version that's going to be updated in a beta mode next week will have just the zones tab by itself. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. If not, let me know. Shoot me an email. All right, I think I'm all out of new features to talk about. Somebody else asked, can you alter the shape of the zones? For example, offloading a drop navicular. That is a great question. Unfortunately, the current answer is no. The zones that we have are predefined according to these shapes. So there is not presently an ability to customize these zones. However, if you, let's see if this makes sense here. Give me 1 second. I'll see if I can demo it live with our new contour adjusting tool. So if I as you can see here, let's pretend this is your dropped navicular. It doesn't take much pretending because that's pretty much what's going on here. But obviously it can get more extreme than that. As I move my contour out, let's see what happens to our zone here. So it didn't maybe update as much as I would like. We'll work on that. I'll see if we can figure out a better answer for that, because actually, you know what? See, this is why you got to be careful with the top and the bottom. Let's try that again. I think that should update. Give me 1 second here. I was updating the bottom, not the top surface. So if I update the top surface, and now we can see that the zone has expanded outward to accommodate that. So if I make a really extreme thing here, just for the point of demonstration purposes, there we go. Perfect. Now you can see that the zone has expanded to accommodate that. So you can manipulate the zones based on the contours. Let's put it that way. Hopefully that'll be a good enough answer to get you what you need. All right, any other questions? All right, is there a limit to the degree of medial hindfoot wedging you can add? And also, can the forefoot be balanced in line with medial wedging? Great question. So let's go to this tab to answer, and we'll just pull up a preset here so we can see what we're dealing with. Okay, so the question was about medial, or about wedging, posting, all sorts of fun things. So the foot posting tool has forefoot posting and rear foot posting. Under rear foot posting, you can pick the shape of the rear foot post and the wedge height. So right now you can see that there is a slightly taller distance over here than over here. So we have a medial post going in this direction. And as I change that wedge height, the limit is, it's actually been updated recently to allow a much higher limit. It used to be capped at, I think, 10 millimeters. Now it can go up to a full 30. So if you want to get crazy and do some really supportive rear foot posting, you can do up to 30. You can also pick which side that posting is applied to. So whether you want a medial or a lateral posting, you can change that here. Then the other question is in relationship to the forefoot posting. So if I reset everything here and I go to my forefoot post, I can enable a forefoot post, and it's going to post it like this. If I change the wedge height, let's see if I can show you what that's going to look like here. The wedge height will adjust like this, and I can do that in a way that it is balanced to the rear foot. So as I change my rear foot posting, it will also change my forefoot posting. So let's turn that on so we can see what's going on. And as I change them, they will stay together. If I want to decouple them, I can turn off balance to rear foot, and now I can set the forefoot independent of the rear foot. So I could pick two different values for the forefoot and the rear foot. So hopefully that helps answer your question there. Let's see. I like using the navicular depression setting. Can that be combined with the zone? It certainly can. So let's switch back over here and see if we can highlight how that works. I'm pretty sure, if I understand your question, you can turn on navicular, and that will give you the little divot there for your navicular. We can then turn on zones and do arch, for example. And then if you wanted to also change, like say you had a navicular and you wanted to bump that out, you can now have the navicular relief in addition to the zone. So this whole zone will be sliced separately if you wanted to do it that way. And then the contour to accommodate whatever navicular deformities are there as well. And also the flange should work with that. So if you need to like really get some material out and under a really bad drop navicular, you should be able to accommodate most situations with those combination of tools. All right. I think that's it for the questions. I think that's it for the new features. Stay tuned. We're going to be doing a LeoAFO webinar soon. Let me double check the date for that. I believe it's next week. That's going to be Wednesday, February 11th, right around the same time as we did today. So if you're interested in learning about the LeoAFO side of things, whether you are doing CNC workflows or 3D printing workflows, we have the ability to handle both of those. So if that's something you're interested in learning more about, please sign up for the webinar on, what day did I say, shoot, the 11th? Yes, sir, the 11th. All right. Additionally, I want to follow up with one last thing here. So if you are already a LeoInsole user and you're interested in getting some more training, or you have questions about these new features, a lot of people drop their messages in here that they're interested in the beta version. That's going to be available next week. So we can reach out and make that happen, whether it's more training or if you're just interested in the new features. Additionally, if you're not currently a LeoInsole user, but you want to learn more, we can definitely schedule a demo. So I'm going to put my calendar link in the chat here. And Marcel previously in the chat shared my email. So feel free to shoot me an email or pick a spot on the calendar, and we can do a live demo, and we can kind of meet and talk through what is possible with all the different things, with all the different features and softwares that we have. So happy to meet with anybody, answer any questions. Please let me know. I'll stick around here for a couple minutes if you have some questions in the chat or if you want to see any other features. Otherwise, have a great day. Appreciate you guys coming, and hopefully we'll see you next week for the LeoAFO webinar. And we'll go for the beta testing next week for LeoInsole. So I'm excited to hear some feedback and get these tools out into people's hands so you guys can start doing some cool things and let us know how it's working out for you. So thanks, have a great day, and we'll talk more soon. Let me know if you guys got any more questions in the chat here, and we'll wrap it up. Appreciate it.